recording. Okay, I think we do the countdown. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We begin. And so today is June 13th, 2020. Okay, we could begin with the homage to the Buddha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Okay, good morning again, everyone. And
good morning, Bante.
okay, and please, I have to ask everybody to mute the microphone unless you're going to speak. Okay, so we have been reading the Anguttara Nikaya Book of Fours, and we are in Sutta number 41. And the theme of this sutta are the 4 developments of concentration, the 4 ways, you could say, of developing concentration, or 4 types of concentration. And the key word here, of course, is the word, in the Pali word, Samadhi. And so the expression is Samadhi Bhavana, ways of developing this Samadhi or concentration. And last week we took the first method, or the first type of concentration, which is called the concentration that leads to dwelling happily or pleasantly in this very life. And that is the Samadhi obtained with the achievement of the 4 jhanas. And what is meant when it's said that this is a concentration that leads to dwelling happily in this very life? I think this can be referring to the practice or the achievement of the jhanas attained maybe by 2 or 3 types of people. One would be the attainment of the jhanas by ordinary people, ordinary meditators who don't know the Buddha's teaching, not familiar with the Buddha's teaching. So these would be like the yogis and meditators from the non-Buddhist systems of ancient India who are able to attain the jhanas, and they don't recognize or realize the limitations of the jhanas. In fact, they might take the attainment of the jhanas to be the achievement of liberation itself, to be the experience of nirvana itself. And so they attain the jhanas and they dwell happily in this life, but they don't use the jhanas to go further for the development of wisdom or insight in order to eradicate the fetters and gain the true liberation. So we find meditators of this type mentioned in the Brahmajala Sutta, the first discourse of the Digha Nikaya, in which the Buddha says that these are meditators who hold the wrong view about the ultimate nirvana. They think the attainment of the jhanas is the ultimate nirvana, the parama, I think it's called the parama Ditha Dhamma parama nibbana, the attainment of ultimate nirvana in this very life. And so they identify that with the jhanas, and so they have no motivation for going further beyond the jhanas. So that would be one kind of person who uses the jhanas as a way of dwelling happily in this very life. Another type of person would be those who follow the Buddha's teaching, who practice the Buddha's teaching and attain the jhanas, and they're working to develop the path, but from time to time, rather than apply their minds rigorously to the development of insight or vipassana, from time to time, they like just to dwell happily and blissfully in this life. And so they'll use the jhanas as a way of sort of refreshing the mind and making the mind softer and more pliable, more flexible for the development of insight, and also just to enjoy this pleasant dwelling here and now. Then the third type of person who might use the jhanas as a way to dwell happily in this very life would be the arahats. So the arahats have already completed the practice of the path. They have done the work that had to be done. And so they've attained nirvana in this life. But still, from time to time, in a sense, you could say that they're already in nirvana, even when they're going about their daily, day-to-day activities, walking on alms rounds, sweeping the monastery grounds, maybe filling the water buckets, going to the toilet, and preaching the Dharma. In all these activities, in a sense, you could say that they are in nibbana. But the mind is still, when they're engaged in those activities, the mind is still operating at the level of, let's say, sense sphere activities involved with entangled in the various duties, obligations, responsibilities, and so forth. And so from time to time, they like to withdraw from those outer activities and settle the mind peacefully and blissfully in samadhi. And so they will use the jhanas as a station, a platform of tranquility for dwelling happily in this very life. So even the Buddha himself, the great arhats like Sariputta, Mahakassapa, Moggallana, Anuruddha, continue to attain the jhanas, even though they don't have to do it to use the jhanas for any further practice to reach any higher stage. Okay, so those are some of the ways in which the jhanas, attainment of the jhanas, will be a way of dwelling happily in this very life. So that's just a kind of summary of the first development of concentration. So now we come to the second kind of development of concentration, and this is called the development of concentration that leads to obtaining knowledge and vision. Yeah, so in Pali, I'll copy and paste this. Okay, so this kind of concentration, this is the kind of concentration that leads to that's sangvatati. Obtaining or gaining, that's patilabha. Knowledge and vision. Jnana is knowledge. Vision, dasana is vision or seeing. And sometimes this expression, jnana dasana, is used in relation to the higher knowledge, the knowledge of insight. So for example, it's said that the Buddha instructs the disciples to strive to gain the knowledge and vision of things as they really are. Yatha bhuta jnana dasana. And sometimes the expression jnana dasana is used for the attainment of the arhat, the knowledge of arhatship. But here we could see from the elaboration, the explanation in the text, that what is meant by knowledge and vision is something relatively lower, more mundane. And this is what is called the divine eye. Technically is called the divine eye, which is the ability to see things that lie beyond the scope of ordinary human vision. So that is the explanation actually given in the commentary. So this is the commentary, says knowledge and vision here is the divine eye, the knowledge of the divine eye. The Pali expression is diba chaku. Chaku, of course, is eye, and diba is divine. So this is the knowledge of the divine eye. And how, and what one can do with the divine eye is to see, well, first one could see things that are occurring at a great distance. Well, actually now you could say I have the divine eye because I can see at least through the Zoom. Let's see, anybody in Malaysia on this, on the Zoom call?
Yes, Bhante.
Yes,
Okay.
Bhante.
Okay, if I were to put your image, I would see you in Malaysia. I know some people are in Canada, maybe some in California. So in a way, Zoom gives us the divine eye. But in that case, I have to depend on these electronic equipment. And so if I want to go off to meditate someplace, I have to take my computer and make sure that there's internet access and so forth. But when you get the real divine eye, you can go off to a little cottage or hut, just with no electronic equipment, no Wi-Fi, no internet access at all. And you sit and you go into the Samadhi and open up the divine eye. And then you could see things going on all over this world, in other continents, wherever you direct your intention, that will come within the range of your vision. But not only do you see things going on in this world, in this world that we share with other human beings and with animals, but you can use the divine eye to see other planes of existence. So you could direct the divine eye downward, and then you can see the hell realms and the realm of the hungry ghosts or the afflicted spirits. And you could direct the divine eye upward, and then you see the various heavenly beings or celestial realms. So how does one develop this divine eye? What is the decisive method? Well, first, this is according to the commentarial way of explaining, you have to develop the fourth jhana. So that is the foundation for the divine eye. But then once you develop the fourth jhana, then you develop the fourth jhana in a particular way, using a particular meditation subject. And that subject is called the light kasina. That is a circular disc of a bright light. So one could use the light of the sun or the light of the full moon, or we can use an electric light, preferably by covering over the light itself so that we don't have diversity in our vision. So you're just seeing a uniform, brightly lit area. And if you use the sun, don't stare directly at the sun. One just quickly gets an image of the sun and then focuses on it inwardly through inward perception. And so the formula says to practice this kind of samadhi, one attends to the perception of light. One gets this mental image of light, and then first outwardly, from an outward source of light, and then one focuses upon that light inwardly. And so one focuses on the perception of day thus, as by day, so at night, as at night, so by day. And the commentary says, as one attends to the perception of light during the daytime, so one attends to it at night, and so in reverse. So if you use the image of the sun as to get your perception of light, then at nighttime, you can still bring to your field of vision the image of the sun. If you use the disk of the full moon to get your field, to get your perception of light, then during the day, you can still focus upon the image, the light of the full moon. And so in this way, by focusing upon the image of light, it's said that the mind opens up and the sort of obstructions, the impediments of darkness are dispelled, and one develops or acquires this mind that is flooded with light, imbued with luminosity. And then one uses that light, that bright light that appears in the mind, one directs that light to whatever region one wants to perceive, whether distant region on our physical plane of existence or to the other realms of existence. And that particular area towards which one directs one's intention, that will open up and appear as clearly and plainly before you. There's another function of the divine eye that is mentioned in the suttas, in the text. And maybe this is a more advanced application of the divine eye, and that is to perceive the passing away and rebirth of sentient beings. And so through this application, one sort of spreads the light of the divine eye, one spreads it out upon the world, and then one forms the determination, the intention, let me see how sentient beings are now passing away, and when they pass away, where they take rebirth. And so as one looks out upon the world, sort of lit up by the spotlight of this luminous mind, as one looks out upon the world with that strong determination, one will start to see people who are dying, passing away, and then one sees how when they pass away, they take rebirth, and what realms they take rebirth. And one sees how the rebirth is determined by their past karma. So this is elaborated in the text. Yes, one finds this in the Buddha's description of his own enlightenment and in the description of some of the powers of knowledge gained on the way to arhatship. So one sees how those people or beings who committed evil by body, speech, and mind, who slandered the noble ones, who held wrong view, how when they pass away, as a result of that karma, they take rebirth in realms of misery. Whereas those beings who do good deeds by body, speech, and mind, who don't slander the noble ones, who hold right view and act on their right view, they take, when they pass away, they take rebirth in good destinations and reap pleasant and beneficial fruits of their actions. So those are the results of, well, that is the application of the divine eye to see and to witness the passing away and rebirth of sentient beings. Okay, now we'll go on to the third development of concentration. And this is called the development of concentration that leads to mindfulness and clear comprehension. Okay, we can look at the Pali here. I keep on this. Yes, okay, so this is said to be the development of concentration that leads to mindfulness and clear comprehension. Okay, so samvatati, it leads to, and what it leads to is sati and sampajanya. Sati is mindfulness, and sampajanya is what I translate as clear comprehension. Some use full awareness, others clear knowledge, and so forth. And what's a little bit puzzling is that it's said that the concentration leads to mindfulness and clear comprehension. Though ordinarily, we think that mindfulness and clear comprehension lead to concentration, that we practice sati and sampajanya in our everyday life, and particularly in our formal meditation practice, in order to gain samadhi, concentration. And that seems to be true in relation to the samadhi of the jhanas. In that case, mindfulness and clear comprehension become the instruments or tools for gaining the jhanas. And then within the jhanas, mindfulness and clear comprehension become prominent, particularly in the third and fourth jhanas. But here it said that there is a particular method for developing concentration that leads back to mindfulness and clear comprehension. And that is stated in this, well, first we'll read the English. So what is that kind of way of developing concentration? So it said, here the monk knows feelings as they arise, as they remain present, as they disappear, as they vanish. He knows perceptions as they arise, as they remain present, as they disappear. He knows thoughts, and for thoughts, the word is vitakka. As they arise, as they remain present, as they disappear. And the formula in the Pali is actually somewhat interesting, but actually I've already pasted it here. Because in Pali, in English we say a monk knows feelings as they arise and so forth. But the Pali expresses this with a passive construction. So literally, it's saying that for a monk, feelings are known, vidita, as they arise, upajanti. They are known, again, vidita, as they remain present, upatahanti, as they are persisting. And then they are known, again, vidita, as they go to extinction, as they go to their vanishing. So it's almost as if the monk or the practitioner is not exerting himself or herself to make a deliberate effort, but rather as if one is sort of standing back or sitting back, like watching a movie. And when you're watching the movie, you're sitting in your seat, and then the movie is passing along on the screen, and you're watching. Now the gangsters have come into the bank and they're robbing the bank. Now the detective has found out who the gangsters are. Now the police have arrested the gangsters and sent them to prison. So one is sitting there watching the movie. And so in this case, the monk is sort of sitting back from a post of observation, watching feelings arise, perceptions arise, thoughts arise, persists for some time, and then disappear. And so this is the exercise of, well, this, we could say that this observation is itself the samadhi through which one is practicing mindfulness and clear comprehension. So it's not a fixed concentration like the jhanas. In the jhanas, one is honing the mind, focusing the mind upon a single point, a single object, and stabilizing. Excuse me, my voice is wavering. One is narrowing the range of awareness, the focus of attention to a single object, and stabilizing the mind on that object without any movement, without any inverting to other objects. But this is a kind of concentration in which one is just attentive to the field of awareness. And then as feelings arise, one knows now a pleasant feeling, now some painful feelings, now some neutral feelings. One knows the feeling as it is lasting, one is aware of it. When the feeling vanishes, one knows it's gone. When certain perceptions arise, or ideas. Here, maybe as if one is doing an internal meditation, here, sanya will take the form not of perceiving outward objects that might occur in everyday life, but certain ideas take shape in the mind. In fact, usually sanya precedes vitaka. So ideas take shape in the mind, and when those ideas take shape or arise, instead of following them up and trying to see where they lead, what is the significance of those ideas, you simply note them when they come up, when they are enduring for some time, one sees them persist, and then when they vanish, one notes their vanishing. And if those perceptions should trigger thoughts, sequences of discursive thoughts, again, one watches the thoughts, not pursuing the thoughts, but one just notes that these thoughts have arisen, and one perhaps will let them stand for some time, and then as one is observing them, remaining present, after a moment or two, they will vanish, and so one sees them disappear. So that is this practice of samadhi that leads to mindfulness and clear comprehension. And I just collected a number of other texts that use the same formulation. So one, this doesn't really add anything, but in this sutta, the Buddha is praising his cousin. His cousin is named Nanda. So he's praising Nanda for his practice of mindfulness and clear comprehension. And again, just the same formula. In the sutta, in the Majjhima Nikaya, sutta number 123, this is an interesting sutta, because here, in the earlier part of the sutta, Ananda is praising the various wonderful and marvelous qualities of the Buddha. And what's meant by those wonderful and marvelous qualities are the different, we call these miraculous events that take place in relation to the conception of the Buddha, that is his conception in his mother's womb, and the birth of the Buddha, how when the Buddha came out from the mother's womb, he was received by deities who then a stream of water fell from the sky that the deities used for bathing the newborn Buddha. And then how when the Buddha was put down on the ground, lotus flowers appeared out of the ground. And then the little baby Buddha, not, or we could say the Bodhisattva, took 7 steps on these lotus flowers and then pointed upward to the heavens and downward to the earth and said, in this world with its heavens above and its earth below, I am the honored one. I am the supreme in the world. This is my last birth. There will be no further existence beyond this. So those are the miracles that Ananda is ascribing to the Buddha. But then the Buddha says to Ananda, you should remember this, Ananda, as another wonderful and marvelous or even miraculous quality of the Tathagata, of the enlightened one. That for him, feelings are known as they arise, as they remain present, as they vanish. And so for perceptions and thoughts. Okay, we'll finish the 4 types of samadhi, and then I'll open the the Zoom program to questions. Okay, so now we come to the fourth kind of samadhi. So this is said to be the development of concentration that leads to the destruction of the taints, the destruction of the asavas. Yeah, so the Pali expression here is the development of concentration that leads to, and then what it leads to is kaya, destruction, elimination of the asavas. And we all, or at least most of us who have been through these classes again and again, we know what the asavas are, the three asavas. First, the asava is the fundamental or most primordial defilements, those defilements that reside deep at the very base or foundation of the conditioned mind and flow up from these deep levels of the mind into active consciousness and then flow out from the senses to the world of objects. And so we have kamasava, that is the taint of sensual craving, of sensual desire. The bhavasava, the taint of craving for continued existence. This is the craving that leads us back again and again to rebirth within this samsara. And then the most basic asava is that of ignorance, the taint of ignorance. And so the ultimate task for the follower of the Buddha Dharma is to attain asava. Well, put simply, it's called asavakaya, the destruction of the asavas, and that's equivalent to arhatship. So that's achieved with the realization, the attainment of the fruit of arhatship. And so what is the particular development of concentration that leads to the destruction of those asavas? So here the text expresses it as the monk or the practitioner dwells contemplating arising and vanishing in the five aggregates that are the objective domain of clinging. And so one observes or contemplates, this is material form, this is its origin, this is its passing away. This is feeling, this is perception, these are the volitional activities, this is consciousness, this is its origin, this is its passing away. So that's the development of concentration that leads to the destruction of the taints. So we could see that this kind of samadhi, it's not a fixed, stable concentration in which the mind is collected one-pointedly on just a single object. But again, this is a focusing of the mind on different objects and looking at those objects from different perspectives and watching them, observing them in their process of becoming, in the process of transformation. And so once the mind achieves a certain degree of, usually one will begin by focusing the mind on a single object in order to develop a certain power of samadhi. So one could pursue that development of samadhi to the level of the jhanas if one has that aptitude, that inclination, that skill. And so one can go into the absorptions, and within the absorptions, the mind becomes very peaceful, calm, and clear. And then one emerges from that samadhi of absorption and directs the mind, the focused, one-pointed mind, directs that mind to observe the five aggregates in their process of arising and passing. Alternatively, if one doesn't have that skill to go into the jhanas, one can just develop a kind of preliminary tranquility of mind or stability of mind in whichever way, whatever object one finds most congenial. But once one gains a certain degree of stability, then one turns the mind or directs the mind to observing the arising and vanishing of the five aggregates. And there are some meditators who don't even choose a single point of focus, but they'll begin directly by turning the mind to the five aggregates. So usually one will begin with the aggregate of material form. For example, such a meditator might start with the walking meditation and then just observe the mind in the process of walking, observing the steps. And so one will just be noting walking, walking, or right foot, left foot, right foot, left foot. Then as one goes on observing, say, the process of walking, one will see, okay, first one starts seeing the body as a whole in the act of walking. And so in this way, one is noting this body that's walking, this is material form, the aggregate of material form. And then within the walking body, one will start dissecting the presence of the four elements. One will experience the hardness or solidity of the body. That is the earth element. One will experience the body as in the act of movement or motion. That motion is said to be the manifestation of the wind element or the air element. One will experience the body as being hot or warm or cold or cool. So that is the manifestation of the fire element. And then at the subtlest level, one experiences the cohesion of the body, the way the body holds together, binds together. That is the water element, the liquid element. And so now one is experiencing the body first in its totality, and then by way of the elements. And so one is observing that is material form. And then within the step, one will start to see the elements within each step. So it's said, this is in the commentaries, that the lifting of the step is the work of the fire element, because fire moves upward and it's most active. The pushing forward of the step is the work of the wind element, because the wind usually blows horizontal or parallel to the surface of the earth. Then putting the foot down, that is the operation of the water element, because water flows downward. And then putting the foot on the ground itself and feeling the support of the earth, that is the manifestation of the earth element, because now the foot is contacting the earth. And so one is seeing the four elements even within a single step. And so now one is observing in finer detail the earth, the aggregate of material form through the four elements. Okay, now with each step, one is seeing arising and passing away, because when one begins the step with the act of lifting the foot, that is the origin of the step. Then there's the intermediate stage where one brings the foot forward. Then one puts the foot down and presses it against the ground. That is the passing away of the step. Then one turns the attention to the next step, and again one sees the origin with the lifting of the foot, the intermediate stages, and the passing away of the step with the putting of the foot down and pressing it against the ground. Okay, so in this way, in regard to material form, one is observing origin and passing away through the act of walking. And as one is walking, one could even then turn the mind from the body, the material form, to the feelings. One starts by observing the sensations that occur in the act of walking. So one will experience the sensations of lift that occur with lifting the foot, putting the foot forward, putting it down. Sometimes there'll be pleasant feelings, sometimes neutral feelings, sometimes painful feelings. And one sees those feelings arising, persisting, passing away. And similarly, as one is walking, one will be noting the steps, and that act of noting is the work of perception. And so there'll be taking place the step itself and the noting of the step. And that noting is a perception which accompanies the physical step. And so the noting of arising occurs with the lifting of the foot. The perception of persistence occurs as one brings the foot forward, and the noting of passing away occurs as one notes the ending of the step. And so in this way, as one follows the walking back and forth, one will be seeing a constant succession of acts of perception arising and passing, arising and passing along with the steps. Okay, then the step itself occurs as through the work of volition. You know, we don't normally notice this, but even to take a single step, let us suppose one is on one's walking path, so one wants to lift the foot. And so the lifting doesn't occur automatically. We are not like a wind-up puppet, a puppet or a wind-up doll, where you wind up the doll and put it down on the table, and then you release the spring, and then the doll starts walking. Step, right step, left step, right step, left step. But for human beings, every step that we take is conditioned by and directed by an intention or volition. So now, within the observation of the walking, within the practice of the walking meditation, one watches the intention to lift the foot, the intention to bring the foot forward, the intention to put the foot down, the intention to shift the weight and press the foot against the ground. And so one is seeing with each phase of walking, the volitions arise, perform their function, and pass away. So volition succeeds volition. And then one is watching all of this through consciousness, through vijnana. And so at the subtlest level, as each act of walking occurs and ends, the consciousness noting that or aware of that is also arising and passing away. So in this way, in the act of walking, one is observing the 5 aggregates, noting what they are, noting their function, and seeing how in the act of walking, each is arising and passing away, arising and passing away. And then one goes back to one's sitting position and sits down, and then one could be either watching the body as a whole or watching a bodily process like the breath in and out. And as one watches the breath, one will see this body is material form. Within the breath, there are the 4 elements, the sense of hardness or solidity, the earth element, the movement of the breath, the air element or wind element, the heat or coolness of the breath, the fire element, and the cohesion of the body in the act of breathing, the water or liquid element. And then with each breath, one observes its origin, its ending, its origin, its ending, and then one moves from the physical breath to observe the feelings, perceptions, the volitions, and consciousness involved in the observation of the breath. And so all 5 aggregates come within the domain of contemplation. So that is the contemplating, arising, and vanishing in the 5 aggregates. Then I collected a number of other texts in which we find the reference to this observing, arising, and passing away. So we find this in the Satipatthana Sutta. It occurs in the 4th foundation of mindfulness, where it says that the monk dwells contemplating dhammas in dhammas in regard to the 5 aggregates. And then that formula occurs. Okay, it's mentioned in, this is the Greater Discourse on Emptiness, where it's explained how a monk practices clear comprehension. And then it said that as one observes the arising and falling or passing away of the 5 aggregates, then asmimana, that is the conceit I am that occurs in relation to the 5 aggregates, that is abandoned. In this sutta in the Samyutta Nikaya, this is chapter 12, sutta number 22, the Buddha says that he roars his lion's roar and sets in motion the sacred wheel, the wheel of the Dharma. And then it says, how does the Buddha roar his lion's roar? the way he does so is by declaring that is material form, this is the arising of form, this is its passing away. And so for all five aggregates. In Samyutta Nikaya, Sutta 22, Sutta number 78, it said that when the Buddha expounds the arising and passing of the five aggregates, then even the devas, the deities who have long lifespans, who are beautiful, who are abounding in bliss and dwelling in their lofty mansions, when they hear this teaching, then they become, for the most part, they are overcome by fear, anxiety, and distress, thinking, we thought that we were permanent, but now we realize that we are impermanent. And then in Samyutta Nikaya, Sutta number 20, chapter number 22, Sutta 89, it said that when the noble disciple dwells contemplating arising and falling away in the five aggregates, then the subtle conceit I am, the desire I am, the inclination I am that occurs in relation to the five aggregates, that is eradicated, that is eliminated. And then another sutta in chapter 22 of the Samyutta Nikaya, chapter 22, Sutta 101, here the Buddha raises the question. First he says, I say that the destruction of the defilements or of the taints occurs for one who knows and sees, not for one who lacks knowledge and vision. And so what is it that one knows and sees in order to achieve the destruction of the asavas? What one knows and sees is this is material form, this is its origin, this is its passing away. And so for feeling, perception, volitional activities, and consciousness. Okay, so maybe this should do as a, well, let's just continue to the very end of the sutta, since there's a very nice verse that concludes the sutta. Okay, here the Buddha sums up, he says, these are the four developments of concentration. And it was with reference to this that I said in the Parayana. The Parayana is a collection of suttas in verse that has been incorporated into the Sutta Nipata. And the Parayana consists of the Buddha's dialogue with 16 Brahmins who had traveled from a distant region of India. All across India they traveled to meet with the Buddha in order to ask him their questions, in order to determine whether he was truly an enlightened one. And one of those Brahmins was named Punaka, and he asked his questions, and in response to one of those questions, the Buddha said, let's get the Pali, it's very beautiful in the Pali. Sankaya lokasmin paro parani yasinjitang nati kuhinchi loke santo vidumo anigo niraso latariso jati charanti brumi. So having comprehended the highs and lows in the world, for whom there is no disturbance or agitation anywhere in the world. Santo is peaceful. Vidumo is literally without smoke. Yeah, here it's translated fumeless, without fumes. Anigo, without any troubles or distress. Niraso, without craving, without wishes, without desires. I say, I declare that this one has crossed over birth and old age, birth and decay. So probably this verse is referring not to the first three kinds of samadhi, but to the one who has completed the fourth development of samadhi, the arhat who has reached the destruction of the asavas. Okay, now we could see whether there's any questions. And I think you know the way to unmute yourselves and the way to raise your hand. Okay, so I take the questions in order. So the first comes from Olivia.
Good morning, Bhikkhu Bodhi. Thank you. Thank you for this elaborate discussion, explanation.
Yes.
In terms of the development 4, I think that it might connect with the question I asked about 2 weeks ago. And when you responded that that the jhanas were not necessary, but because there was something called sukha vipassana.
Right. Yeah.
Am I right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you. It was really lovely to see how one can watch the 4 elements, their functions, the arising and passing, feelings and perception and volition. But I must admit that watching the volition arise and in each and every mini step, part of the step, is very difficult.
Yeah. But actually, maybe I should explain that one would not, when one is watching the volition, one wouldn't begin by watching the volition at such a subtle level, to watch the volitions involved in each phase of the step. But one would begin by watching the volitions with right step, left step, right step, left step. So one starts at the coarser level with the volition for the whole step. Then one might break it down just to 2 phases, the volition in starting the step and ending the step, beginning, end, beginning, end. Then one might go to 3 phases, to lifting, pushing, putting down, lifting, pushing, putting down. And then one might go, as one gains familiarity with the 3 phases, then what would go to the 4 phases. I used to use 4 P's: picking, pushing, putting, pressing.
Okay.
But don't start with 3 or 4 phases, because then the mind gets too sort of entangled.
And the other comment I had is about the 3rd development of concentration, which leads to mindfulness and clear comprehension. That one seems, and it's probably only because of the way we've practiced, it seems a little upside down, like you mentioned. And I just wondered if they were in some way circular.
Yeah, actually, I think that there is a circular, excuse me, a somewhat circular relationship. So to gain samadhi, of course, one has to start with mindfulness, and whenever there's mindfulness, it goes along with the sampajanya, clear comprehension. Yeah, so one starts with sati and sampajanya as a means to samadhi, to bringing concentration. But then as concentration becomes stronger, then it facilitates the practice of mindfulness and clear comprehension. Yeah, so they work a little bit like the way the 2 hands wash each other. right hand washes the left hand washes the right hand.
Okay. Thank you very much, Bhikkhu Bodhi.
Okay, now we'll take Vetri.
Yes, thank you, Monte. So I had a couple of questions. The first is the...
I think we have to ask people, because I see that there's a number of hands raised. And so you have to choose, if you have a couple of questions, choose the one that you consider more important.
So in the third development of concentration, the passages, feelings are known and perceptions are known, and then thoughts are known.
Yeah.
It seems like 3 of the 5 aggregates are covered, but not the other 2, form and consciousness.
Yeah, that is the case, yeah.
That's kind of puzzling to me, because you would know, if you're practicing that way, you would also notice form arising and passing away and consciousness arising and passing away.
Yeah, but I think maybe in this case, because let's say the feeling is most prominent, because often that is like the trigger for greed and aversion. When there's pleasant feeling, one latches onto it through greed. When there's painful feeling, one turns away from it through aversion. So that's why feeling, I think, is singled out. And then sanya, particularly, I think, like one of its aspects is ideas, and that is what sort of triggers streams of distracting thoughts. And so one wants to notice the perceptions before they can proliferate into these reams of wandering thoughts. And so that's why I think that's why the Buddha singles out sanya as perception. And then once the thoughts get underway, that's vitakka. One wants to observe those thoughts, to catch them before they can before they can lead one too far astray. And what's actually interesting is in the process of meditation, sometimes when the mind is really agitated and thoughts just keep on running through the mind over and over, one can't just push those thoughts away willfully, but a way that one could handle them is to step back, not to fight against them, but to step back and say, okay, let these thoughts occur, but I'm just going to sit in my seat like the audience in the movie theater, watching the thoughts flow through the mind. And then as one sits back and watches the thoughts, then on their own, they start to settle down. Okay, now we'll have to move on to Ravi, Sarah.
Yes, Bhante, thank you. Bhante, it's about the last factor of the Noble Eightfold Path, right concentration.
Yeah.
Is it correct to say that right concentration means the 4 jhanas and nothing else?
I don't think that would be quite correct. I'd say in the usual formula for the factors of the Noble Eightfold Path, since the definitions of path factors usually draw upon formulas, fixed formulas. So it draws upon the formula for the 4 jhanas. And I know that there are some interpreters who say, you see, right concentration is defined as the 4 jhanas. Therefore, to develop right concentration, you need the 4 jhanas. But I found some suttas would speak about a practitioner of insight meditation. And in that case, the Buddha says, when one is involved in that insight contemplation, whatever mindfulness is present, that is right mindfulness. Whatever effort is present, that is right effort. And whatever concentration is present, that is right concentration. The clearest instance of this is Majjhima Nikaya Sutta number 149.
Okay, Bhante, thank you. But Bhante, there is another sutta which clearly defines that right concentration is the 4 jhanas, isn't it? And also, Bhante, is it correct to think that Khanika Samadhi or momentary concentration is right concentration, as some teachers seem to sort of suggest?
Yeah. Well, in the commentaries, the idea of momentary concentration, one doesn't find the expression used in the suttas. But I would say that that is the concentration that develops through the practice of insight meditation. That's the concentration that develops through the observation of the arising and vanishing of the five aggregates. And so certainly that is a right concentration. Okay, we have to move on. I'd have to.
Okay, thank you so much, Bhante.
Dayani now?
Oh, yes, Bhante. Namo Buddhaya. So I have this question. This is my own experience, Bhante. Is it possible for a non-Buddhist, this is regarding the type 1 Samadhi, is it possible for a non-Buddhist yogi, probably a believers of Shiva, who has jhana to attain enlightenment?
Who has jhana to what?
Who has jhanas, who probably has jhanas,
yeah,
for them to attain enlightenment.
To attain enlightenment.
Yes.
Okay, what is said, this doesn't matter, depends so much on one's formal affiliation, but what I would say is that to attain enlightenment, one would have to have all 8 factors of the Noble Eightfold Path. And so one would have to have right view. That would be the view of the Four Noble Truths. One would have to be engaged to have right mindfulness, to be practicing the 4 foundations of mindfulness, and to be contemplating the 3 characteristics of impermanence, dukkha, anatta. And so, to my knowledge, the right view of the Four Noble Truths, the 4 foundations of mindfulness, and the 3 characteristics are taught only within the Buddha's teaching. So it's not a matter of sort of priding ourselves and think with a kind of exclusive, dogmatic exclusivism, or exclusive dogmatism, and saying you could only attain enlightenment through Buddhism. But to attain enlightenment, you need these factors, which are, I'd say, special and unique to the Buddha Dharma. So somebody could practice the 4 jhanas and gain all of the benefits of the jhanas, and then they could turn, to maybe to practice insight contemplation through the 3 characteristics. But at that point, they would be practicing a kind of meditation that's really special and unique to the Buddha Dharma. That would be my understanding here.
Okay, Bhante. So I was attending one of the Dhamma class saying that those who has jhana, when they die in jhana, they will be reborn in the Brahma world.
Yeah.
So so even though if this candidate is not practicing the 8 Noble Paths and the other factors for the enlightenment, but as long as they have the jhanas, the like a warranty of them being reborn in the Brahma world is there. Am I right?
Yeah, if they have the possession of the jhanas at the time of death, then then that jhana, its nature is to lead to rebirth in the Brahma world. Yeah, but that is not enlightenment. That's not liberation. It's a superior mode of rebirth within samsara. Okay, I have to move on now to Bowe.
Hi, Bhante. It is pretty difficult to know that the watching consciousness also has the rising and passing away.
Yeah.
How does one do that? Or do any suttas in the Nikaya mentioning any particular method?
I don't think that particular practice is explicitly explained within the suttas, but one finds it. I think the source might be a later work called the Patisambhida Magga, but it's in the Visuddhimagga, the path of purification. And the process is called, the expression used in Pali is pati vipassana, which we might translate as reflexive insight development. And what this means is that, okay, one is initially observing a particular object, say one is observing the breath, and one sees the impermanence, the arising and passing of the breath. Okay, so first there's the moment of observation of the breath arising and passing. And then one turns the mind back upon itself and one notes that the mind that was observing the arising and passing of the breath arose and passed along with the arising and passing of the breath. And to be able to practice this, it requires, one doesn't start doing this at the very beginning of a session of insight practice, but it requires the building up a very strong momentum to be able to turn back very quickly and observe each act of observation arises and passes away. For details, you can look in Visuddhimagga. It would be, I think it's chapter 20. I think it's chapter 21, 20 or 21. It's in the section on the knowledge of dissolution, Bhanganyana. If you look there, you'll find the method explained. Okay, we have to move on with the questions. I could take about 2 more questions. Vinyu?
Yeah, good morning, Bhante. I have 2 questions. The first question
You
is
have to choose one, the
okay,
more urgent one.
Okay, one question. I was meditating, and normally I contemplate the Dhamma. The Dhamma that I contemplate is basically the 4 Noble Truths, followed by the Eightfold Path. So in between, I basically contemplate the 12 dependent origination. So towards the end, say, reaching the right concentration, I see the bright light. So at this juncture, I got fear, and also I got doubt. And many times, basically, I abandoned that, I opened the eyes. So I pray to the Buddha. I say that, Buddha, please help. And I asked a few of the meditators. I don't think that they were giving me the right answer. So one day, I went back to my room. I just opened up a sutta. And this sutta came out, Upakalesa Sutta. So it's exactly bang on the fear and the doubt.
Yeah, yeah.
So my question is this: when you see the light, do you absorb into the light, or what should I do at this juncture?
First, let me say that I'm not a teacher of samatha meditation. So my advice might not be the most authoritative, but I would suggest you might try letting yourself go into the light and see what happens. But then when you finish that experience with the light, pull back and then recognize this is impermanent.
Okay.
You can try it and see, but if you have access to somebody who's a skilled and authoritative teacher of samatha meditation, you might consult them for advice. Okay, we have to move. I see a bunch of hands, but I could only take one more question, so that will be see you.
Oh, hi, Bhante.
Hi.
There seems to be this contentious argument over samatha versus vipassana.
Yeah.
But this sutta so beautifully, I mean, these are like 4 meditations Buddha himself is telling us.
Yeah.
First 2 seems to me in the samatha track. The second 2 seems to be so much in the insight track. How would you see it like that? I mean, there's nothing contentious.
Oh, yeah. The first 2 are in the samatha track. Yeah, that's a good point. The second 2 are in the insight track. Yeah.
So there's nothing contentious about this whole
Yeah.
argument about samatha and vipassana.
Yeah. We'll come to more suttas on the relation of samatha and vipassana when we get to the 90s in the Anguttara Book of Fours.
Thank you, Bhante.
Okay, maybe we could take one more. Let's see somebody who. Okay, I think the next one is Samantha. That will have to be the last.
Yes. Thank you, Bhante. I just want to, it's a bit continuation, I'm getting confused with the two practices. My main object of meditation has been the breath, and I continue to use the Anapanasati, follow the steps in the Anapana Sati Sutta. So, and then some teachers, then I notice it when I go for meditation, they say, now we mustn't get attached to one type of object. You must watch the sensations of the body and from head to toe and toe to head, etc. So I was just wondering, is it best to just stick to one object and practice that, improve that, like say, for example, meditation on the breath, and follow the Anapanasati Sutta steps and try and perfect it? Or
yeah, I would say definitely, yeah, that you should stay with the breath and just follow it through. And you could follow the steps that are laid down in the Anapanasati Sutta, but use always keeping the breath as the primary object.
Okay, and then not switch on to sort of say watch body feelings from head to toe and top to toe.
No, if your preference and your wish is to follow the mindfulness of breathing straight through, then stay with it.
And then try and perfect it as best as I can.
Yeah, there are different systems of practice. Like some will use the breath just as a preliminary object, then go to the observation of sensations in the body. But other systems just take the breath and then follow it through as far as it goes.
Yes, because otherwise I find that there's some confusion otherwise when you change from one practice to another practice.
Yeah, you could just stay with the breath.
Right. Okay, thank you, Bhante.
Okay, I'm sorry, but we're going to have to end now, to end with the sharing of the merits. So let me call up. Oh. Okay, so let us now share the merits with the sharing with the devas, the nagas, and the other spirits. Akasata chabumata deva naga mahidika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakantu sasanang. Akasata chabumata deva naga mahidika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakantu desanang. Akasata chabumata deva naga mahidika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakantu mang parang. Etavatacham hehi sampadang punya sampadang sabbe deva anumodantu sabba sampati siddhya. Etavatacham hehi sampadang punya sampadang sabbe bhuta anumodantu sabba sampati siddhya. Etavatacham hehi sampadang punya sampadang sabbe sata anumodantu sabba sampati siddhya. Bhavagupadaya avici hetato Etantare Satakayu Papanna Rupya Rupicha Sanya Sanino Tukha Pamuchantu Pusantu Nibuting.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Okay,
Bante.
thank you everybody for joining today.
Thank you, Bante. Sadhu,
Thank you,
sadhu.
Bante. Sadhu, sadhu,
Very
sadhu.
much. Very much.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Bante.
Thank you, Bante.
This
Bante.
the recording
Thank you, Bante. Thank you.
to
Thank you.
Okay.
the recording for last week and this
That
week.
was a
Please,
wonderful
Bante.
meeting.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.